Someone asked me recently, either in a YouTube comment or my Facebook group, could I do a tutorial to show how you make a double applique design? We're going to tackle that today. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn, and if you're returning, thanks so much for coming back. I'm going to show you two ways that you can design a double applique in Embrilliance software. Now, the first way you can do totally in Embrilliance software, but it does require Stitch Artist Level 3. Well, I just acquired Stitch Artist Level 3 very recently, and before that, I used a lot of workarounds. So the second way that I'll show you how to do it, I'm going to use Stitch Artist Level 2, but I'm going to bring in the starting file from another program. So as long as you have a software that saves files as SVGs, such as Silhouette Studio Business Edition, Illustrator, or even Inkscape, which is a free design software, you'll be able to make a double applique file in Stitch Artist Level 2. Let's start with Stitch Artist Level 3 first, though. To start my design today, we're going to go right up here to this Create Designs icon. Now, this is a Stitch Artist feature, so if you only have Essentials or Enthusiast, you're not going to see this icon. So we'll click on that, and that brings up other options. One of those options it brings up is this TT. Now, that stands for True Type. Basically, what it's saying is you can access fonts on your computer. Even if they're open type fonts, you can use those as well. We'll click it, and it brings up this text box. Let me go ahead and drag it over here. For today, I want my text to be very plain. I'm going to stick with Arial Black, so I'm going to go ahead and click over these words, delete those, then in all caps, I'm going to type the word cozy. I'll say OK, and it's going to show up on my screen. So let me go ahead and resize this to about the size that I want it. Now my outside outline, the second part of my double applique, is going to be larger, so I need to take that into consideration. But I think that's probably good as far as the width, but I do want it taller. The other thing is, I think this Y is too close for the Z. Once we put those satin border stitches in, I think it would overlap. So let me click off of it, and then I can click back on the Y, and I can just use the arrow on my keyboard to move it over. Now I'm going to go up here to the Select tool and click on it. That way I can select the entire word very easily, and now we're going to group that together. To do that, you go up to Edit and Group. Now you see there's also a shortcut here, but oftentimes I just use the long way. I want you to see how it's done. So we'll say Group. Now let's go ahead and make it a little bit taller. That looks pretty good. And then I want to go ahead and put this in the center of my hoop. To do that, with it selected, go up to Utility and say Center in Hoop. I always like to work with my designs in the center of the hoop. That way, when I go to the machine, I know exactly where it's going to be. Now I want to make a copy of Cozy that I'm going to use for the outline or the offset of the word cozy. So I'm going to use the Command-C, Command-V to make the copy. You could also go up here to Edit, and you could say Copy and Paste. And you can't really tell right here that there is a second copy, but if you look over here, you can see there is. Now I want to move that down and out of the way, so I'm just going to use the down arrow on my keyboard to move it down. Eventually, this one is going to be my outline or my offset. If you're an old-time paper scrapbooking person, in those days we called this a shadow. So I might call it a shadow, an offset, or the outline. So let's go back up to the original word cozy. We'll click on it. Then we'll go back up here to the Create Designs feature and click on that. And that brought up all the stitches I have available to me. We're making a double applique, so of course I'm going to make this into an applique. The applique feature is right here. Notice when I hover over it, it says Digitize an Applique. So let's go ahead and click on that. Now I don't love this stitch, and to change the features of this word cozy or of the applique design, I go right over here and click on Applique. I want to change my border stitch from an E-stitch to a satin stitch. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Let's go up to, let's try 3.5. I think that looks fine. Now my Y and my Z are touching, So let's fix that. Remember, these are grouped. So if I click here, I'm going to get the whole group. But I can still click over here. Now I'm going to use the arrow key on my keyboard and move it to the right one time. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's better. Now I need to do that down here. Now this is grouped also because it was just a copy of the original word cozy. So let's click off of it and go over here and click on the Y. I need to move it one space as well, or one click as well. Now that threw off it being in the center. So let's go back. We're going to use the select tool. I'm going to select all of the original word cozy. I'm going to go up to utility and say center and hoop. Now eventually I'll do that with this cozy as well, but not until I put the stitches on it that I want. All right, so let's go ahead and click back on cozy. I'm going to click back up here because that's going to make that applique feature show up in the bottom right corner. So I'll click on it. Let's go back to our applique features. Okay, that got changed to a little bit more than 3.5. We'll go down to 3.5. And then down here, right now it's only set to do a position stitch. In applique, typically you have a placement or position stitch that shows you where to put your applique fabric. Then you stitch around it with what's called a material or a tack down stitch. My Embrilliance is set not to do that by default, so I want to click that on. And then lastly, I rarely ever use the fabric preview, but when you're doing these double appliques, it's very helpful. So let's go ahead and click that on. Okay, this layer is ready. I'm going to go ahead and just minimize it over here. Now we're ready to work with this one. Remember, this is the one that I'm going to turn into an outline, an offset, or a shadow. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And then I'm going to go right up here. Now this is a Stitch Artist Level 3 feature, and it's called Inflate Objects. I'll click on it. That brings up my inflate box, and I have some options here. We really just want an outline of the word cozy. So beside the word outline, I'm going to click on this little slider tool, and I'm going to slide it up. I'm going to slide it all the way up. Where it says holes, that's talking about like the center of an O or the center of an A or the centers of B's. We don't want that to stay in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the remove holes. When I do, watch what happens to this right here. Now I'll just say OK. Now we're almost there, but we still have an issue because all these lines overlap, and we don't want that. We just want one solid outline. To fix that, I'm going to go right up here to where it says Logical Union. Now, for those of us that work in Cricut, this is the same as Weld. When I click on this, watch right here. Watch what you see. All right, let's go ahead and click on it. Here's our new outline, or our new offset. So I can get rid of all of these. Let me click off of it. And then click on one, hold the command button down, click on the rest, and then I can just hit delete on my keyboard. We have one issue with this, and I'm going to show you how to fix that right now. But let me go ahead and move this up on my screen. Okay, so we don't want this cut out of the center. So I'm going to click on this outline cozy, and now you see all of the edit points, or the nodes, or the editing points, editing nodes, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go ahead and drag my cursor around those that are in the middle, and I'll hit delete. Now, if I wanted to fix anything else, I could do that at this time. Let's say I think this is too high. I don't, but let's say I think it's too high, because you're often going to have things that come up. I could circle around those nodes. I could either drag them down manually, or I can hit the down arrow key and I can move those down. Now we have a little hump here, so we would have to go in. Let's zoom in and see if I can find that. Okay, I think this will do it. So now I'm going to delete that, and it makes it better. Now, I like it how it was originally, so I'm going to go ahead and go back. To do that, you can either say Edit, Undo, or on your keyboard you can hit Command and Z. And you're going to click on that until it's back to where it started, which is right there. All right, let's go ahead and put our hoop back in the center so I can see everything. Now we're ready to turn this into an applique file. If there were some extra nodes that I saw, I could get rid of those. I think this looks fine. So let's go ahead and move forward. With it selected, I'm going to go right back up here to the Applique feature. I'll click on it. I'll go over here to the word Applique so I can change some things. And I'm going to make this larger. Everything else is fine though. So now I'm going to put this in the center of the hoop. It's still selected, so I'll click on Utility and then Center in Hoop. And you can see we have an issue. This is going to stitch out in the wrong order. That's why I like to leave the fabric preview on, because you can see those things. If it was off, it looks fine. But with it on, you can see it's just in the wrong order. So we want to move this to the top or this to the bottom. This is already selected, so I'm going to go over to Edit, Sequence Objects, and I'll just click on Move First. And that's what we want. If you want this outside to be larger, there's a couple things you could do. You could either start moving all these nodes, or when we hit the inflate and we had the word cozy that got larger, you could then select that larger cozy and inflate it, and it would just keep getting larger and larger. Now that we have this, let's go up to Stitch Simulator and see how this would stitch out. So we'll click on Stitch Simulator, and then I can just drag this over. I can hit the play button also, but I typically just drag it so I can go at my speed. So it is showing that we would have a placement stitch for the outline. Then we would have a tack down stitch for the outline. Then we would do the satin border stitch. Then we would move on to the placement stitch of the C, then the tack down stitch of the C, then the satin border stitch of the C. And we're going to go through that for each and every letter. Now this would stitch out, but it's pretty inefficient to do it this way. So if you also have Embrilliance Essentials, you can fix this so it's much more efficient. It's not required. This would work perfectly fine, but we can make it more efficient with Embrilliance Essentials. All right, let's go ahead and get out of the simulator. To do that, I can click right here. So what I was talking about using to make this stitch out more efficient is a feature called Color Sort. Again, it is an Embrilliance Essentials feature, but it's going to make my job a lot easier for placing my applique fabric and stitching out the design. Now I'm going to go up and I'm going to use that Color Sort feature. That is going to have a problem. And it's going to have a problem because right now the colors of the outline are basically the same as the colors of the word cozy. So if we color sort it, let me show you what happens. We're going to go to Utility, Color Sort, and it asks me if I want to open this in a new view. When I do, and I always do, you're going to see a new file pop up right here. So I'll say New View. Now if we stitch it out, we'll click on that Stitch Simulator. You can see that it is going to do all the placement lines first, then all of the tack down lines, and then finally it's getting around to doing the satin border stitch for everything. That's going to be a problem because once I put my outline fabric on, it's going to cover over my placement stitches for the word cozy. So we need to change some colors. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this one. And we're going to fix the colors on our original file. So if you look here, look at our applique, we have yellow, darker yellow, and gray. If you look at the word cozy, for each letter, we have those same three colors. But if I look at all of cozy, we have a lot of layers we'd have to change. For that reason, I'm going to go up here and just change the colors of the outline. And the only reason I'm doing it on the outline is because I'm only going to have to change 3 colors as opposed to 12 colors. So let's click on Applique. Let's go down here to the Applique position stitch, click on it, and then I'll go to Threads, and I can choose a new color family. Maybe I want to go with blue or green. It doesn't have to be the colors I'm going to use in my stitch out, but I need to distinguish it from the word cozy. So let's go find something pretty. This limestone's gorgeous. Let's use it. So I'll click on it and I'll say OK. Notice how my fabric preview changed to match those position stitches. Now let's click on Applique Material. We're going to pick another color. I'm going to stick in the blue or the bluish green family. Let's go with Seafoam Green. I'll say OK. That was just my material stitch, so you can't really see it yet. We'll run that stitch simulator again in a minute. And then lastly, we're going to click on this color. That is the color of the satin border stitch. And let's go back to limestone. And we'll say OK. Now if I run that stitch simulator, you'll see that we have the placement stitch for our outline, the tack down stitch for our outline, and then the satin border stitch of the outline. We still have the same problem though with the word cozy. That's what color sort's going to fix. So I'll go to Utility and say Color Sort. We're going to save it as a new view, and then one more time we'll run that stitch simulator. This time it should be perfect. We have our placement stitch, our tack down stitch, our satin border stitches. Then for the word cozy, all of the letters have the placement stitch laid down. You put your fabric down, then you do this tack down stitch, and then we finish up with the satin border stitch for all the letters in the word cozy. This is exactly what I want. All right, let's save this. Now I want to show you the second method. So if you have Stitch Artist Level 2, but you don't have Stitch Artist Level 3. So let's go and say New Page. And then I'm going to go ahead and go into Silhouette Studio Business Edition. You would just type the word cozy. So I click on the text tool, click over here. In all caps, we're going to type cozy. You have to click off of it and then click back on it. And then I can change it to Arial Black. Let's go ahead and drag it to about the size I want it. Now the width looks pretty good. The height looks like it's over 3 inches, but we have all this excess space. To get rid of that, I'm going to go to Object and Ungroup. Now I can go right back to Object and group it, and I see this is only 1.6 inches tall. So let's drag that quite a bit taller. Now, I shouldn't have grouped it yet. Let me show you why. Let's go ahead and ungroup that because I need to move this Y over still. That looks pretty good, so let's select everything, go back to Object, and Group. We're going to put some color in it also. So this is the inside of my double applique. Now we need to make that outline. To do that, you have this selected. Go over here to Offset. We're also going to click right here on Offset. This would actually be an internal offset, which means you would get a smaller version of this word. We want a larger version, so we're going to click on Offset. And let's make that just a little bit larger. Something like that looks fine. So I'll say Apply. And look, we still have that problem in there. Let me go ahead and click off of this. And I'm just going to move this out of the way. Let's click on our offset. And then to get those edit points, edit nodes, whatever you want to call them, you click right over here. They call them edit points. I can hold my Shift key down, and that allows me to just drag around the ones I want to get rid of. I let go of that Shift key and hit Delete. Now, there's a lot of nodes in here, and we can probably decrease these. And decreasing the amount of nodes is always good before you take it into Embrilliance. So with it still all selected, we're going to go up to Object and down to Simplify. When I click on that, you're going to see some of those nodes disappear. All right, it got rid of a few. That's a good thing. Last thing before I save it is go ahead and select both items. Go up to Object, Align, and we're going to align it going both horizontally and vertically. Then I like to just group them together. Now I could have changed that offset of color. It really doesn't matter. When it goes into Embrilliance, it's not going to matter if they were a color or not. I just changed cozy because it's easier for me to see. So here's what you need to do. Go up to File, say Save As, And you want to make sure that you change it to an SVG format. In Silhouette Studio, the only version that allows you to do that is the Business Edition. Now, the Business Edition is a one-time payment, and I believe it's on sale right now when I'm making this video for $39, which is as low as I've seen it. So I'll put a link to that in the video description in case you're interested. Now I'm going to say cozy for double applique. All right, let's get rid of that and go back to Embrilliance. We'll make sure we're on the right file. So I just clicked right here. To bring in the SVG, I'm going to go right up here to create designs, and bringing in an SVG is a Stitch Artist Level 2 feature. So you would have to have that. So I'll say create designs. That brought up those options again, but this time I'm going to click on vector. Here's the file I want to bring in. So I'll click on it and I'll say open. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this. The only thing I see that I need to fix before I move on is, you see the outside of the O is separate from the inside of the O. So I have the inside selected. I'm going to hold Command down and add the outside to it. I let go of the Command button, go up here to Create, Outline, and Combine Holes. And you see that fixed it. So we're going to go ahead and make the outside into an applique, just like we did before. So I'll go a little bit faster this time. We'll click on Applique. We'll change it to a satin border stitch. I want this outside one to be quite large. Let's go all the way up. Well, maybe not that large. Let's go down to 5. I want my fabric preview, and I want to add a tack down or material stitch to it. With that selected, I might as well go ahead and move that up to the top. So I'll go over to Edit, Sequence Objects, and I'll say Move First. Now it's time to make cozy into an applique. So let's select all the letters of it. I'm holding down the Command button while I do that, and go up to Edit and Group. Now we're going to go right back up to that applique feature, click on it, and we're going to make this outline or this satin border stitch a little smaller. And hopefully they won't be touching at that time. We're going to click right here, and we're going to take this down to 3.5. I'm hoping it'll be okay at 3.5. And it is. I think that looks fine. Now this one already has the preview of the fabric, the position or placement stitch, and the material or tack down stitch, because that's what I had selected earlier. So now I want to go up to the select tool, select all of this, and just make sure it's in the center of the hoop. It was, but I just always like to make sure of that. Now remember, we could stitch this out like this. There's our outside stitches. Then we go through each and every letter individually. It would work, it's just not efficient. So once again, I'm going to use my Embrilliance Essentials feature and click on Applique. We're going to change those colors again. I might not be as picky this time. Let's just find some colors. That one's pretty. Now this is ready to do the color sort. Go to Utility and say Color Sort. We'll open this in a new view, and then hopefully for the last time we'll go through the Stitch Simulator. Let's see how it looks. And that looks perfect. Now that we've made our design, let's see how it stitches out. Before we do though, I want to find out, is this something you think you'd like to try now? Is it something you feel confident that you could do now? Let me know in the comments, and if you have other questions, put those in there as well. The first stitch is the position or placement stitch for my outside fabric, and I used glitter HTV. Next is a tack down or material stitch. After that, I removed the hoop to trim down the HTV, and then it was time for the satin border stitch. Everything is going really smoothly with this stitch out, and I can't wait to see it finished. While the satin border was stitching out, I was busy preparing the next piece of fabric that I would be using, and that's a polka dot fabric in similar colors as the HTV. Now this is where I made the mistake of using a turquoise placement stitch on turquoise HTV. It made it very hard for me to get my fabric placed correctly because the placement stitch was so hard to see. I ended up cutting this next fabric out with my laser, and that makes for really fast work of cutting your fabric. It also has Heat and Bond light on the back. I could have skipped the tack down stitch, but I wanted to see if my letters were placed okay before spending all the time it takes for doing the satin border stitch. If it was going to look bad, I was starting over. But luckily for me, even though my O wasn't placed very well, the satin border stitches covered everything they needed to cover for me to be happy. In the end, this turned out absolutely beautiful. I have one little piece of HTV peeking out, but that'll come off very easily with a pair of tweezers. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you in my next video.